Hello and welcome to today's video. It's based on the AQA Power and Conflict Poetry and it is specifically for the poem Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. So let's get started. Welcome to the Literature Tutor. Okay, so today what are we going to look at? Well, I've got three things I want to get through: the context, reading and annotation. In the context, we're going to look at Romanticism and who is Percy Bysshe Shelley. Then we're going to read the poem and we're going to have a look at the first impressions that we get of the poem, including some of the main themes. And then we're going to look at annotation. Firstly, I'm going to explain to you what language, form and structure is, and then we're going to annotate the poem together and look at some of the key bits of language, structure and form being used. So, what is Romanticism? Well, it was a movement, okay? We're not talking about love hearts or chocolates or admiration. We're actually looking at a literary and cultural movement that originated towards the end of the 18th century. And it's really characterised by a glorification of the past. You'll find that a lot of romantic texts talk about the medieval times in a very nostalgic manner. And it's also really interested in nature and how beautiful nature can be. So it's focused on emotion rather than reason. If you think about Renaissance, it's very focused on the reason and science, but Romanticism is the opposite. It talks about emotion. So there is a real link between nature and Romanticism and religion, and the fact that being with nature is being connected to God. In addition to that, Romanticism focus on the sublime, the fact that nature can be beautiful but actually terrifying at the same time. Take a waterfall, for example. Waterfalls are awe-inspiring, beautiful, but also can be very terrifying. Although that water could be linked to drowning or getting hurt. So the sublime is a link between the beauty and also danger. And some of our most prominent romantic poets are Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, Byron, Shelley, William Blake, all of those really grandiose poets that we know of because we are studying poetry. They are considered romantic poets. So, well, who is Percy Bysshe Shelley? Well, his birth date is on the slide along with his death date. He was one of the most important romantic poets. He was married twice, but his second wife is Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. We all know the story where Percy Bysshe Shelley, his wife Mary Shelley, and Byron tried to have a competition of who could write the best horror story, and I believe Mary Shelley to have won that competition. He wrote fiction and political essays as well as poetry, and Percy Bysshe Shelley is known for being quite a political radicalist. Okay, he wasn't very keen on power from a monarchy, and he was really inspired by the French Revolution. With his views that in the French Revolution the monarchy was actually impeached and overthrown and eventually had their heads chopped off. So Percy Bysshe Shelley kind of had ideas similar to what happened to the monarchy in France, and he did showcase that in some of his writing, but it was a bit more covert in his writing, because if he were identified as being a radicalist, he may have been prosecuted and gotten into a lot of trouble. So you'll find that his texts are a lot more watered down, and you'll see that in Ozymandias today. So he was also an atheist, which means he didn't believe in God, and this really links to his political views, because he thought that organised religion was linked to social oppression. The fact that the church was a little bit corrupt and everyone had to follow the church was something that he really disagreed with. He disagreed with people having to follow one particular ideology and one particular rule. He thought that people should have more autonomy over their lives. So I'm going to read the poem to you, and then I'm going to talk about some of its main themes. So without further ado, I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hands that mocked them and the hearts that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So that's the poem. You will find that some of its main themes concern time, power, arrogance. Okay, so let's start with the most glaring one: power. Ozymandias is king of kings. He is all powerful. He says to the reader, look on my works. Despair at how insignificant you are and compared to me. So the power of Ozymandias seems to be quite great, but it's very ironic because his statue is shattered, that he's half sunk, it's in the middle of an antique land that no one cares about and no one goes to. So Ozymandias, his power has been rendered insignificant over time. Time has erased his power. So we can really see here how power and time are working against each other. And how does this link with our context? Well, Percy Bysshe Shelley believed that monarchs shouldn't really have so much power, that it should be equalised along with those that follow the monarch. And we've got arrogance here. Of course we have. Ozymandias is so arrogant. So the poem, what it's really about is this traveller. He tells our speaker a story and the speaker relays that story onto us. And it's about a statue in the middle of a desert that has become desolate. The statue has sunken in the sand, the face has fallen off and it lies in the ground. And it once was a statue of a very, very powerful king. And the fact that time has actually rendered that power useless, insignificant. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at language, form and structure. I'm going to tell you what each one means, and then we're going to identify those things in the poem. So language. When I say let's pick out language techniques, what I mean is our samosap. And if you don't know samosap, that's fine. But they are techniques such as similes, adjectives, metaphors, onomatopoeia, the senses, alliteration, personification, and any interesting use of vocabulary. So that's your language. Form concerns the type of the poem. Is it a sonnet? Is it a limerick? Is it a ballad? Why do you think the poet has used that form? How many lines are there in each stanza? How many stanzas are there? That all concerns the form. And finally, structure. Structure, in a very simple sense, is what happens in the beginning, middle and end of the poem, but also concerns the use of punctuation and rhyme. How does the focus change in the poem? So let's put all that into practice while looking at the poem. So first of all, the form of the poem is a sonnet. It's a sonnet, but not in the traditional sense. It's not a love poem. It's a poem about failed power. The fact that power is never prominent. Time always renders power insignificant. So although it's a sonnet, it subverts our expectation. It doesn't follow what we expect a sonnet to follow. And at line 9, where it says, and on the pedestal these words appear, line 9 is our turning point. So all sonnets, or most sonnets, have a turning point, or you can also call it a volta, and that's ours. It goes from talking and describing the statue to actually hearing Ozymandias' voice that's etched into the pedestal, and the fact that time has rendered him insignificant, irrelevant. So that is our volta, our turning point at line 9. So that's our form done. We're now going to go through the poem with you and pick out some interesting words, some techniques being used, and some structural techniques being used. And then I'm going to leave it up to you to annotate yourself, find your own interpretation. So, in terms of structure, our speaker has met a traveller who tells him a story. So we've got a traveller telling our speaker a story, and then our speaker telling us that same story. So it is a narrative, and it is also all hearsay. So our speaker has never actually been, which kind of shows how insignificant Ozymandias is. Our speaker has never been, doesn't really care much to go. But it is a narrative that we are being told. So structurally, it's a narrative. And our travellers come from an antique land. The word antique is very prominent because it's old. No one has cared to go there. Okay, it's forgotten. And he says, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. The use of the word trunkless, it shows that the fact that it's derelict, that it is crumbling, it is a ruin. So stone stand in the desert. You're going to find throughout this poem there's a lot of alliterative S sounds, which is sibilants. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies. Half sunk, it's sinking, it's being eaten up by the earth. The earth wants to forget about it, is eating it up. Half sunk and shattered. Shattered is broken, beyond repair. Visage, if you think of Nivea visage, the cream, okay, the face lies in the ground. It has a frown and it is wrinkled. Look at those words, frown and wrinkled. What do those words tell us about Ozymandias? And sneer of cold command. Again, sneer is very violent, nasty. And that alliteration there, cold command. Tell that it's sculpture, while those passions are red, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. Lifeless. Okay, it has no relevance anymore. It's stamped, almost like it's branded. You can't get rid of the fact that it is lifeless. The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. Mocked. Ozymandias is being mocked by the sculpture. It's got that double meaning there. Mocked meaning taken the mick out of, but also the sculptor is mocking the likeness of him. Okay, so that double meaning there. He's being mocked, but also mocked in that showing that likeness of him in the statue. And on the pedestal, these words appear. Pedestal is an interesting word. You put people who you admire on a pedestal, people you want to look up to. So again, that irony, pedestal. Ozymandias has been put on a pedestal, but the pedestal is broken and it is shattered. And it says, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. That repetition of King of Kings. He is the most prominent, the most powerful, the most important King of Kings. Look on my works. The use of the word look is an imperative, commanding people, not asking them, telling them, look at the things that I have done. Ye mighty, and despair at the fact that I am better than you. That exclamation there, an exclamation mark there is showing how he's kind of angry. He's forcing people to look at his grandeur. He's got a very grandiose opinion of himself. Okay? It's very angry as well. Look at that imperative. Look on my works, ye mighty, despair. Very angry. Nothing beside remains. That full stop there, that pause, is what we call caesura in poetry, and that caesura emphasises the fact that there's nothing else around. All of this grandiose language, I'm King of Kings, I'm mighty, but nothing is there to show for it. Round the decay is that rotting of that colossal wreck. I love that line, the colossal wreck. It's not just a ruin, it is a colossal wreck. Boundless and bare, alliteration. The lone and level sands stretch far away. Lone and level. Again, that alliteration is showing us how the sand is level. You can see for miles and miles and miles, but there's nothing there. no one to care about his power, no one to worship him. There is nothing left. Time has erased him. So that's all I'm going to do by going through the poem. I'm now going to leave it up to you to do some annotations for yourself, some interpretations for yourself. I'd love to see some of your interpretations down in the comments below. If you like this video, please press the like button. And if you'd like to see more, press the subscribe button. Thanks a lot.